Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lynch DMs, where I, Lynch, will be discussing with you all today about your plot for your D&D campaigns. So, let's grab some pens and paper and pencils, and let's start taking some notes. So, you may be wondering, what is a plot? So a plot is effectively the main story of your D&D campaign. This could be as simple as, like for example with Lord of the Rings, a delivery plot. So the delivery is the One Ring, so they have to deliver the One Ring to Mount Doom. And that is it. And it works so well because it's so simple. Another main one is to defeat the big bad, which most D&D campaigns tend to run. So you'll establish that there is a big bad in your world and needs to be stopped. And so that will be an example for plot. Another example would be to rescue someone. So in one of my campaigns at the minute that I'm running, they have to rescue the High King of the continent because he's gone missing. How he's gone missing and where he is, they will later on discover through the sessions in the future of where he's been, where to find him, and what he's been up to for this entire time. And the ramifications of the High King being missing will play throughout the sessions as well. So to start with, let's pick a basic example, which is to defeat a big bad, and we will break it down and we'll help to kind of analyse to make it simpler for you guys all at home that's wanting to plan a plot for your D&D campaign. So let's start out. So starting out with the most basic and simple plot idea that most campaigns use, which is to defeat your big bad, or your BBG for short. So most stories are broken down into three parts, which is your beginning, your middle, and your end. So in the beginning, this is where you will establish, if you haven't done already, the worlds, the state of the world, why your characters have all been drawn together into this adventuring party, and what's going on. There will be hints about a big bad within the world, but you don't know who they are or where they are, or you might have a rough idea through NPC dialogue that they will then provide to the players to give them information and tidbits of clues to generally steer them in the right sort of direction. The middle will then be trying to figure out weaknesses that the big bad may have, where he may be, and sort of discovering clues and trying to prepare for the main fight at the end. You may as well, in the middle of the plot, encounter the big bad's lieutenants or captains or chiefs, and these will be able to provide clues as to the whereabouts of the big bad, who he is, what he's up to, and what his kind of main goal is, which, to be fair, most of the time is to generally take over the world. It could be that he wants to, a bit like Thanos, sort of kill half the population for the greater good. He might have a slight sort of twist to his ideas. It might be that he wants to steal all the world's gold and become the richest and most powerful being in the land. He might want to, again, falling back onto the previous point, just wreak havoc and destroy everything. Or he might want to try to build one great big empire. But the way he's going about it is not exactly the best thing and must be stopped. Then the end part is that your characters have figured out where he is, who he is, and by this point are at a high enough level and have the right equipment and resources to defeat the big bad. And this is where you have your big, dramatic and climactic showdown that everything has been building up for the past months or maybe even years of campaign sessions leading up to this one big fight at the end. And of course you want it to be as big and dramatic as possible. There is a slight issue with sort of having loads of characters and the action economy and that sort of thing, but that's something that we can look into at a later date. But regardless, you want it to be big and dramatic and as rememberable as possible. So that's generally the idea behind a big bad plot idea. So let's look at another example. So another example of a plot will be a delivery plot. So let's take, for example, that in the beginning part of your story, it is established that this powerful relic, this sword, let's say, has gone missing and has been missing for quite some time. Now, the sword represents a sort of a sigil of office and power to the main king or ruler within the land, but has gone missing due to a massive battle that happened so many years ago, and no one's been able to find it since. So that's the main idea, and your players will be tasked to try and find this powerful sword MacGuffin thing, whatever you want to have. You could have it as a shield, you could have it as a crown, a jewel, a ring maybe, just kind of borrowing ideas from Lord of the Rings perhaps. I mean, your players will probably pick up on certain tropes and certain ideas that you may sort of cherry pick from certain franchises, but generally speaking, most of them will be fine with you kind of borrowing and leveraging ideas from other franchises, because of course creativity feeds creativity and everybody ends up stealing each other's ideas. So let's just say, for example, it's a sword, and then once your players have sort of gone about and you've introduced sort of different quests and missions to try and find the sword, that could lead to someone who was a blacksmith who used to work with someone who made the sword so many years ago and said, oh yes, it ended up in this town. And then you then travel to said town, and then they say, oh yes, that was then due to a massive battle which happened over in these mountain ranges. They then get to the mountain ranges and find that it was there but is now gone. So then this is when you would sort of roll into the midpoint or the middle of your story. And this is where your players will discover that the sword has been stolen by a nefarious group that wants to use the sword in a ritual to bring about a massive demon that they believe will help to sort of cleanse the world of all the sins of the current ruling monarchy and establish a new order, and they will all be saved. But you know, and your players know, that in doing so, that letting loose this massive demon will of course end the world, and you don't want that to happen. So that kind of leads into a bit of a big bad kind of plot, but it's sort of branched off from the main plot, which is a delivery item. However, if you're planning to run a sci-fi based campaign, then you can easily take the ideas I've mentioned previously and then just convert them into the theme that you're running. So for instance, instead of having to find this ancient powerful sword, it could be an ancient powerful starforge or a super weapon that needs to be discovered and taken back to the good guys before the bad guys can get hold of it and run havoc throughout the various systems in the galaxy to try and take over it in their name. Instead of a king or a queen or a lord, it could be a senator or a governor that needs to be found before the bad guys can interrogate them and probe them for information to find out where the rebel base is, or something along those lines. You can obviously take ideas and cherry pick from the likes of Star Wars and Star Trek. It's completely fine with that. Your players may pick up on this, and they will most likely be fully on board with this sort of thing, and it will probably help to familiarise them as well with the plot that you're trying to create, and they might be more on board, and it will help to sort of get a better picture in their mind of how everything looks of what you're trying to describe. But there aren't really that many campaigns that do sci-fi based themes. It tends to be more in favour of fantasy based than it is sci-fi. There are some out there. For instance, there is a website called Star Wars 5e that I'm currently running a Star Wars based campaign, and it's going really well. And it is different. There are some different sort of types of classes and subclasses in there that I'm trying to get my head around, but it is a lot of fun, and I do recommend, if you are experienced in Dungeons and Dragons, and you have one campaign that's fantasy, and you're a really big Star Wars fan, I really recommend checking out that website, because it's got a whole massive treasure trove of information, PDF files, rule books, the lot, everything you need really. So yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, I recommend checking them out. I'll put a link in the description down below as well. So these are just some general ideas of how to create a plot, a story for your D&D campaigns or your sci-fi based campaigns that you want to run with your friends. I hope that this has been really informative and you have learned something today. If you have any other suggestions of plots and ideas, do post them down below, as I would love to have a little read through and become inspired by your ideas and suggestions as well. And hopefully that my suggestions have helped to inspire you all at home as well. So thank you ever so much for listening. And sort of, I say watching along, there's just kind of random pictures and little kind of video clips up in the background just to have something there for you to look at. But yeah, as I say, I've included a link down below for the Star Wars 5e website. I highly recommend checking it out if you wanted to run that sort of campaign. And I will include links as well in the description for my affiliate link for Wayland Games. You can pick up loads of Dungeon Master, Dungeons and Dragons products on there, so all the rulebooks and miniatures galore as well. So without further ado, stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you next time.